Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, I've got a quick favor to ask. If you haven't already, smash the subscribe button like it's the snooze button on a Monday morning. Trust me, your future self will thank you. You'll get exclusive access to all my shenanigans, misadventures, and the occasional piece of useful content. Plus, subscribing adds 10 points to your coolness level. Scientifically proven, not scientifically proven. March 21, 2026, the first entry in my diary of the end. Detroit, once bustling with life, now an eerie shadow of its former self. The city I grew up in, the city I loved, is now a labyrinth of decay and despair. My name is D, and I am one of the few left trying to make sense of this nightmare. It all started with a whisper, a rumor of a strange illness spreading across the country. No one paid much attention until it was too late. By the time the news outlets called it a pandemic, the streets were already filled with the infected, their lifeless eyes and ravenous hunger, a stark reminder of our failure. The first wave hit hard, hospitals overflowed, and the police were powerless against the tide of the undead. We were told to stay indoors, to barricade ourselves from the chaos outside. But when your own home becomes a prison, how long can you truly stay safe? I remember the night it all fell apart. The sounds of sirens and gunfire, the screams of neighbors, and the smell of smoke filling the air. It was chaos, pure and unfiltered. My family, they didn't make it. I barely escaped, clutching nothing but this old leather-bound journal. Detroit is a war zone now. The once thriving metropolis has become a graveyard, overrun by the undead. Every day is a struggle for survival, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of humanity. Supplies are scarce, trust is even scarcer, and hope is a fragile thing. This diary is my lifeline, a way to keep my sanity amidst the madness. I'll document everything, the good, the bad, and the horrific. Maybe one day, someone will read these entries and understand what we went through. Maybe they'll find a way to fix the world we destroyed. But for now, I write, I survive, I fight. My name is D, and this is my story. Chapter 1, The First Encounter. March 22nd, 2026. Survival isn't a matter of luck, it's about being prepared. I've learned that the hard way. Today started like any other in this new world. Silent, tense, and full of dread. I had to leave the relative safety of the abandoned warehouse I've been calling home. Supplies were running low, and staying put was no longer an option. I slipped through the broken window, landing silently on the cracked pavement below. The sky was a dull gray, casting an oppressive gloom over the deserted streets. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking danger, every sound amplified in the eerie silence. I moved quickly, keeping to the alleys and side streets, avoiding open spaces where the undead roamed more freely. The old market on Jefferson Avenue was my destination. Once a bustling hub of commerce, it now stood desolate, its shelves likely picked clean by other desperate souls, but it was my best shot. As I approached, I heard them before I saw them, the guttural moans of the undead, a chilling reminder that I was never truly alone. Peering around the corner, I saw 3 of them, their decaying bodies shuffling aimlessly near the entrance. There was no way around them. I tightened my grip on the crowbar, my makeshift weapon, and took a deep breath. The first swing caught one of them square in the temple, the sickening crunch followed by a thud as it collapsed. The noise alerted the other 2. They turned, their dead eyes locking onto me. I didn't hesitate. Survival meant acting without fear. I swung again, the second one dropping before it could reach me, but the third was faster than I anticipated. It lunged, and I barely had time to react. Stumbling backward, I managed to kick it off and deliver a final blow, its body falling limp beside the others. Heart pounding, I forced myself to stay calm. I had to be quick. Inside, the market was a mess. Shelves were overturned, debris scattered everywhere. I scavenged what I could, canned goods, bottled water, anything useful. As I stuffed my backpack, a noise from the back of the store made me freeze. A figure emerged, not undead, but another survivor, eyes wide with fear and desperation. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, clutching a knife with shaking hands. "Stay back," she warned, her voice trembling. I raised my hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you, just looking for supplies." She didn't lower the knife, but her grip seemed to relax slightly. "We need to get out of here. More of them will be coming." I nodded, realizing she was right. Together, we made our way out, sticking close and covering each other's backs as we stepped back into the street. The familiar sound of moaning grew louder. A larger group was approaching, drawn by the earlier commotion. "Run!" I shouted, and we took off, weaving through the labyrinth of Detroit's ruined streets. Adrenaline fueled our escape, the undead closing in but never quite catching us. Finally, we found refuge in an abandoned apartment building. Barricading the door behind us, we collapsed, breathless, in the dim light of the dusty room. She introduced herself as Mia, another lost soul in this forsaken city. We shared a silent understanding. Trust was a luxury, but survival required cooperation. For now, we were allies, bound by the common goal of staying alive in a world where the dead walked and every day was a fight for existence. As night fell, I took out my journal, recording the day's events by the flickering light of a half-broken lamp. Today, I survived. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new horrors. But as long as I could fight, as long as I could write, I would endure. My name is Dee, and this is my story. March 23, 2026, surviving day by day in the ruins of Detroit. Now, I'm not alone. Mia and I have formed a fragile alliance, one built on the simple need to survive. Together, we might just have a chance. Chapter 2, The Radio Signal. March 24, 2026. Detroit's mornings are a cacophony of unsettling quiet, broken only by the distant moans of the undead. Mia and I spent the night taking turns on watch, a routine we had to perfect to stay alive. As the first light filtered through the grimy windows, we prepared to venture out again. The apartment, though secure for the moment, had nothing more to offer us. We needed information, any hint of where other survivors might be, or a safe zone we could reach. Mia mentioned hearing about a group broadcasting on a makeshift radio frequency. It was a long shot, but in this world, a sliver of hope was better than nothing. "Let's head to the radio tower," I suggested, checking my backpack for our dwindling supplies. "If there's any chance of picking up a signal, it'll be from there." Mia nodded, her expression determined. "Agreed. We just have to get there in one piece." We moved swiftly, the early morning light casting long shadows across the deserted streets. The radio tower wasn't far, but every step felt like traversing a minefield. We skirted around burned-out cars and piles of debris, keeping our eyes peeled for any movement. "We'll have to go through them," I whispered, tightening my grip on the crowbar. "Stick close and follow my lead." Mia nodded, brandishing her knife. We advanced cautiously, trying to stay silent. The first few fell easily, our weapons, making quick work of their decaying bodies, but the noise drew the attention of others. One by one, they turned, drawn by the sounds of our struggle. "Keep moving," I urged, swinging the crowbar with all my strength. The path ahead was closing fast as more of them shambled towards us. Mia's knife flashed, slicing through the air as she took down another. We can't let them surround us. Just as the situation seemed dire, a loud crash echoed from a nearby alley. The undead turned, momentarily distracted, I didn't waste the opportunity. Now run. We sprinted through the narrow gap, hearts pounding, leaving the horde behind. We didn't stop until the radio tower loomed overhead, its rusted structure a beacon of hope in the decaying city. Inside the small building at the base of the tower, we found what we were looking for: a dusty but functional radio setup. I quickly powered it on, scanning through the static, hoping to catch a signal. Minutes passed, and then, if anyone can hear this, we have shelter we are located at. The signal was weak, but the message was clear: a safe zone existed somewhere north of the city. "We need to go there," Mia said, her eyes alight with a newfound hope. "It's our best chance." I nodded, feeling the weight of our journey ahead. Let's prepare and move out. The sooner we get there, the better. As we left the radio tower, a sense of purpose filled us. We had a destination now, a reason to keep fighting through the ruins of our world. The undead were still out there, relentless in their pursuit, but we had something they didn't hope and a plan. Together, we would navigate the perilous streets of Detroit, one step closer to finding others and maybe reclaiming a piece of our lost humanity. My name is Dee, and this is our story of survival and defiance in the face of the apocalypse. Chapter 3, The Ambush, March 25, 2026. With a destination in mind, Mia and I set out at dawn, leaving the radio tower behind. Every step towards the safe zone was fraught with danger, but we were determined. The streets of Detroit had become a battlefield, and we had to be ready for anything. We navigated through the city, avoiding major roads where the undead congregated. Our path took us through narrow alleys and abandoned buildings, each turn a gamble with our lives. As we passed an old industrial district, a sudden noise made us stop dead in our tracks. "Did you hear that?" Mia whispered, her knife already in hand. I nodded, scanning the area. The sound came from a nearby warehouse, its large doors slightly ajar. A flicker of movement inside caught my eye. "Stay behind me," I said, raising the crowbar. We approached cautiously, every sense on high alert. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of rusted machinery and discarded crates. The air was thick with dust and the stench of decay. As we moved deeper, the noise grew louder. Footsteps, human ones. We weren't alone. Suddenly, a group of survivors emerged from the shadows, their weapons drawn. "Drop your weapons," one of them barked. A burly man with a makeshift spear pointed at us. Mia and I exchanged a quick glance. We had no choice. Slowly, we lowered our weapons and raised our hands. "Easy now," I said calmly. "We're not here to fight. We're just passing through." The leader stepped forward, scrutinizing us with wary eyes. "Who are you?" "I'm Dee. This is Mia. We're heading to the safe zone north of the city." We heard the broadcast. The man's expression softened slightly, but his grip on the spear didn't loosen. We heard it too, but that broadcast could be a trap, a lure for desperate survivors like us. Mia stepped forward. "We don't have much of a choice. We need to believe there's something better out there." The leader hesitated, then lowered his spear. "You're right. We all need something to believe in." He introduced himself as Rick and motioned for his group to stand down. "We've been hiding here for days, trying to gather supplies for the journey. Maybe we can help each other." It was an uneasy alliance, but in this world, every ally counted. We spent the next few hours scavenging the warehouse together, finding enough food and water to sustain us for a few days. As we prepared to leave, Rick pulled me aside. "There's something you need to know," he said, his voice low. "We've seen others headed north. Some of them didn't make it. The roads are crawling with the undead, and worse, there are bandits, preying on anyone they come across." I nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. "Thanks for the warning. We'll be careful." We set out together, a small band of survivors united by a common goal. As we moved through the city, the dangers Rick had warned us about became all too real at every turn. We encountered the undead, their numbers increasing as we neared the outskirts of the city. Our progress was slow, each encounter a brutal reminder of the world we now lived in. We fought off wave after wave, our makeshift weapons barely holding up under the constant assault. The streets were a gauntlet, and the undead were relentless. In the midst of one skirmish, a gunshot rang out, echoing through the deserted streets. We turned to see a group of bandits emerging from the shadows, their guns trained on us. "Drop everything," their leader shouted, a scarred man with a cruel smile, "or we'll drop you." Mia and I exchanged a quick glance, knowing we couldn't win a firefight. Reluctantly, we lowered our weapons and raised our hands, but Rick wasn't ready to give up. He lunged at the bandit leader, knocking him off balance. Chaos erupted. Gunfire filled the air, and I grabbed Mia, pulling her to cover behind a wrecked car. The bandits were better armed, but we had numbers on our side. Rick and his group fought with desperate ferocity, every blow a fight for survival. In the chaos, I spotted a gap in their defenses. "Mia, follow me," I shouted, charging towards the nearest bandit. I swung the crowbar with all my strength, knocking the gun from his hands. Mia followed up, her knife finding its mark. The bandits, caught off guard by our sudden assault, began to fall back. We pressed the advantage, driving them away. When the dust settled, we were battered but alive. Rick approached, bloodied but victorious. "Thanks," he said, catching his breath. "We couldn't have done it without you." I nodded, looking at the bandits' fallen leader. "We need to move now, they'll be back." We gathered what we could from the bandits and continued our journey. The safe zone now more than just a distant hope. It was a necessity. As night fell, we found shelter in an old church, its stained glass windows casting eerie shadows in the dim light. We took turns on watch, the events of the day weighing heavily on us. I pulled out my journal, writing by the light of a flickering candle. Today, we faced death and lived to tell the tale. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but we would face them together. My name is Dee, and this is our story of survival and hope in the apocalypse. Chapter 4, A Farewell. March 27, 2026. The morning dawned gray and somber, matching the heaviness in our hearts. Rick's sacrifice weighed heavily on our minds as we prepared to continue our journey towards the safe zone. His absence left a void in our small group, a reminder of the harsh reality of this new world. We said our farewells to Rick's makeshift grave in the park, a simple marker serving as a silent testament to his bravery. Mia placed a handful of wildflowers on the mound of dirt, a final gesture of respect for our fallen comrade. "He was a good man," she said softly, her voice filled with sorrow. I nodded, unable to find the words to express the depth of our loss. Rick had been more than just a leader. He had been a friend, a beacon of hope in the darkness. His memory would stay with us, driving us forward even in the bleakest of times. With heavy hearts, we resumed our journey northward, the road ahead uncertain and fraught with danger. The streets of Detroit stretched out before us, a maze of crumbling buildings and forgotten memories. But amidst the desolation, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for a new beginning in the safe zone. As we traveled, we encountered other survivors, each with their own tales of loss and resilience. We shared what supplies we could spare, offering comfort and solidarity in a world torn apart by chaos and despair. Together, we were stronger, bound by a common goal of survival. But as the days passed, our numbers dwindled. Some succumbed to illness or injuries, while others simply lost hope and disappeared into the wilderness. Each loss was a painful reminder of the fragility of life in this unforgiving landscape. Despite the hardships, we pressed on, driven by the hope of reaching the safe zone and finding a new home amidst the ruins. Along the way, we encountered signs of life, a distant radio signal, a faint flicker of light in the darkness. Each discovery fueled our determination, reminding us that we were not alone in this struggle. As we neared the outskirts of the city, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The safe zone beckoned to us like a beacon of hope in the distance, promising sanctuary from the horrors that lurked in the shadows. We quickened our pace, eager to leave the nightmares of Detroit behind us. But as we reached the edge of the city, we were met with a devastating sight. The safe zone, once a symbol of salvation, lay in ruins. The walls had been breached, the buildings reduced to rubble. There was no sign of life, no trace of the sanctuary we had hoped for. Tears welled in Mia's eyes as she gazed upon the devastation. "It's gone," she whispered, her voice filled with despair. I reached out and took her hand, offering what little comfort I could. "We'll find another way," I said, my voice heavy with grief. "We'll keep moving forward together." And so, with heavy hearts and uncertain futures, we continued our journey into the unknown, clinging to the hope that somewhere out there, amidst the chaos and despair, a new beginning awaited us. My name is Dee, and this is our story of survival, loss, and the unbreakable resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Chapter 5. The Gauntlet, March 28, 2026. The day began with a chill in the air, an eerie quiet hanging over the desolate streets of Detroit. Mia and I, now alone again, had spent the night in a crumbling office building near Gratiot Avenue, its broken windows offering little protection from the elements, but some cover from prying eyes. The loss of Rick and the devastation of the supposed safe zone weighed heavily on us, but we couldn't afford to linger in despair. "We need to find another safe zone," Mia said, her voice resolute despite the fatigue etched on her face. "There has to be another one out there." I nodded, my mind already racing through possible routes. "We head west, towards Woodward Avenue. If there's any semblance of order left, it'll be there." We gathered our supplies and set off, navigating the labyrinthine streets with caution. The once vibrant city was now a graveyard, its silence occasionally broken by the distant moans of the undead. We moved quickly, avoiding main roads and sticking to back alleys where the shadows offered some protection. As we neared Woodward Avenue, we came across a barricade, a makeshift wall of cars and debris, manned by a group of armed survivors. They eyed us warily as we approached, their weapons raised in a clear warning. "State your business," one of them shouted, a weary man with a scar running down his cheek. "We're just passing through," I replied, keeping my hands visible. "We're looking for a safe zone." The man exchanged glances with his companions before nodding. "You can come in, but keep your hands where we can see them." They opened a gap in the barricade, allowing us to pass through. Inside, the scene was a stark contrast to the chaos outside. A small community had taken root here, with survivors working together to fortify their position and share resources. The leader, a stern woman named Carla, approached us. "You're lucky you found us. This area is relatively secure, but it won't stay that way for long. The undead are getting bolder." "We're looking for a permanent safe zone," Mia explained. "Somewhere we can rebuild." Carla's expression softened. "We've heard rumors of a large settlement near Ann Arbor. It's a long shot, but it might be worth the journey." "We appreciate the information," I said. "We'll rest here for a bit, then head out." Carla nodded. "Just be careful. The road to Ann Arbor is dangerous. You'll need to be on high alert." We spent the next few hours resting and resupplying, grateful for the brief respite as we prepared to leave. Carla handed us a map with a marked route to Ann Arbor. "Follow this path," she said. "It's the safest way." With renewed determination, we set off once more, heading west towards the distant promise of safety. The journey was fraught with peril, each step taking us deeper into the heart of danger. We moved through the decaying remains of Detroit, past the skeletal structures of abandoned buildings and rusting cars. As we reached the outskirts of the city, the landscape began to change. The urban decay gave way to open fields and dense woods, a stark reminder of the world that once was, but the dangers remained, lurking in the shadows and waiting to strike. We encountered our first major obstacle near Grand River Avenue, a massive horde of undead blocking our path. They were drawn to something in the distance, their guttural moans filling the air as they shuffled forward. "We can't go through them," Mia whispered, her grip tightening on her knife. "We need to find another way." I scanned the area, my eyes landing on an old service tunnel nearby. "There," I said, pointing. "We can use the tunnel to bypass them." We made our way to the tunnel entrance, the darkness inside a foreboding presence, with no other option. We descended into the depths, the air growing colder and damper with each step. The tunnel was a claustrophobic maze, its walls slick with moisture and covered in grime. Our flashlights cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. Every sound was amplified, the drip of water echoing like a distant scream. We moved cautiously, our footsteps muffled by the damp ground. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, an endless corridor of darkness and despair, just as I began to wonder if we'd ever see daylight again. We heard it, a faint scratching sound, growing louder with each step. We rounded a corner and froze. Ahead of us, a group of undead had somehow found their way into the tunnel, their eyes glinting in the dim light. There was no way around them. "Backtrack," I whispered urgently, but it was too late. The undead had noticed us, their moans rising in a chilling chorus as they advanced. We turned and ran, the tunnel echoing with the sounds of our desperate flight. The undead were relentless, their decaying bodies moving faster than we'd anticipated. The narrow confines of the tunnel worked against us, limiting our movements and making it impossible to fight back effectively. "Keep going," I shouted, pushing Mia forward as we rounded another corner. Ahead, I saw a glimmer of light, the exit. We burst out of the tunnel, the sudden daylight blinding us momentarily, blinking against the brightness. I realized we had emerged near a cluster of abandoned houses, their windows broken and doors hanging ajar. "This way," I urged, leading Mia towards one of the houses. We crashed through the door, slamming it shut behind us and barricading it with whatever we could find. Breathless and exhausted, we collapsed on the floor, the adrenaline still coursing through our veins. The undead pounded against the door, but the barricade held for now. "We need to keep moving," Mia said, her voice shaky but determined. "We can't stay here." I nodded, pulling out the map Carla had given us. "We're close. If we can make it through the next few miles, we might reach Ann Arbor by nightfall." With renewed resolve, we gathered our strength and prepared to move out. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we had come too far to turn back now. As we stepped out into the open, the setting sun cast long shadows across the landscape, a reminder of the darkness we had left behind. But with every step we took towards Ann Arbor, a glimmer of hope flickered in the distance. We were survivors, fighting for a future in a world gone mad, and as long as we had each other, we would keep moving forward. My name is Dee, and this is our story of perseverance and the relentless pursuit of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. Chapter 6, The Heart of Darkness, March 29, 2026. The morning light filtered through the shattered windows of our latest refuge, an old building that once housed the Detroit Public Library on Woodward Avenue. Its grand halls, now crumbling and filled with debris, echoed with memories of a time when knowledge and culture thrived. Today, it was just another temporary sanctuary in a city of ghosts. Mia and I gathered our supplies, checking and double-checking everything. The library had offered a brief respite, but we couldn't afford to stay. Our goal was still Ann Arbor, and every moment spent in one place increased our risk of encountering the undead, or worse, bandits. As we stepped out into the desolate street, the magnitude of our journey struck me anew. The city, once vibrant and alive, was now a graveyard of rust and ruin. We moved cautiously, our senses heightened, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. Our path took us past some of Detroit's most iconic buildings, now haunting reminders of a lost era. The Fox Theater, once a beacon of entertainment and joy, stood dark and foreboding. Its grand marquee, where the names of performers and shows once gleamed in bright lights, now displayed only rust and decay. Further down, we skirted the perimeter of Comerica Park, the stadium, where the roar of the crowd and the crack of the bat once echoed, was now eerily silent. The giant tiger statues that once guarded the entrance loomed like silent sentinels, watching over the empty field of dreams. As we reached the intersection near the Renaissance Center, a towering complex of gleaming glass and steel, we paused. The cluster of skyscrapers had been a symbol of Detroit's rebirth and resilience. Now, its reflective surfaces were shattered, the interiors likely crawling with the undead. "Do you think anyone's left in there?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and doubt. I shook my head. "I doubt it. It's too exposed, too dangerous. We need to keep moving." We pushed on, the Renaissance Center fading into the distance behind us. Our path took us through the heart of the city, past landmarks both grand and humble. The Guardian Building, with its stunning Art Deco architecture, stood as a silent witness to the city's glory days. The spirit of Detroit statue, usually a symbol of hope and resilience, now seemed to bow under the weight of the apocalypse. As we approached the Detroit Institute of Arts, a sense of sadness washed over me. The museum, a treasure trove of human creativity and history, was now just another relic of a bygone era. The thought of masterpieces left to gather dust in the darkened halls was a sobering reminder of all that had been lost. Our journey took a sudden turn as we reached the outskirts of the city. We encountered a barricade made from overturned cars and debris, a makeshift wall intended to keep the undead at bay. As we approached, a group of survivors emerged from behind the barrier, their weapons trained on us. "State your business," a woman commanded, her voice steady but wary. "We're just passing through," I replied, raising my hands to show we meant no harm. "We're heading to an arbor." The woman eyed us for a moment, then nodded. "You can come in, but don't cause any trouble." Inside the barricade, we found a small community of survivors, working together to defend their position. The scene was a mix of hope and desperation, people clinging to whatever semblance of normalcy they could muster. We were offered food and water, and in return, we shared what little information we had about the journey ahead. "We heard there's a large settlement near an arbor," Mia explained to the group's leader, a man named Marcus. "Have you heard anything about it?" Marcus nodded. "We've heard the same. A few of our people tried to make the journey, but we haven't heard from them since. It's dangerous out there." "We have no choice," I said. "We have to try." Marcus looked at us with a mixture of pity and admiration. "Good luck. You'll need it." After a brief rest, we prepared to leave, grateful for the respite, but eager to continue. The path to Ann Arbor was fraught with danger, but it was our only hope. As we left the barricaded community, the city gave way to open fields and dense forests. The landscape was a stark contrast to the urban decay we had left behind. But the dangers were no less real. The undead were everywhere, and each encounter was a reminder of the relentless threat that pursued us. The sun was beginning to set when we reached the outskirts of an old industrial complex. The massive buildings, once humming with activity, now stood silent and foreboding. As we approached, a distant sound reached our ears, a low, guttural moaning, growing louder with each step. We rounded a corner and froze. Ahead of us, a massive horde of undead blocked our path, their decaying bodies packed tightly together. There was no way around them. "We'll have to find another route," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. But as we turned to leave, The ground beneath us began to shake. A deep, resonant rumble echoed through the air, followed by the sound of metal tearing and concrete shattering from the shadows of the industrial complex. A colossal machine emerged, a construction excavator, its massive claw swinging wildly. It plowed through the horde of undead, scattering bodies in all directions. At the controls was a lone figure, their face obscured by a mask. They maneuvered the machine with practiced ease, clearing a path through the undead with brutal efficiency. "Come on," the figure shouted, their voice barely audible over the noise. "This way." We didn't need to be told twice. We sprinted toward the excavator, dodging the flailing limbs of the undead. The machine provided a temporary reprieve, buying us precious moments to escape. As we reached the other side of the horde, the figure jumped down from the excavator, pulling off their mask. It was a young woman, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, but her eyes filled with determination. "Name's Alex," she said, extending a hand. "You two looked like you could use some help." "Thank you," I replied, shaking her hand. "We're heading to an arbor. Do you know the way?" Alex nodded. "I do, and you're in luck. I'm heading that way myself. Let's get moving. It's not safe here." With Alex leading the way, we set off once more, the ruins of Detroit fading into the distance behind us. The journey ahead was still perilous, but with each step, we moved closer to a new beginning. As night fell, we found shelter in a small abandoned farmhouse, its weathered walls providing some protection from the elements. We took turns on watch, the events of the day still fresh in our minds. I pulled out my journal, writing by the light of a flickering lantern. Today, we faced unimaginable horrors and found an unexpected ally. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but together, we would overcome them. My name is Dee, and this is our story of survival, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of hope in a world gone mad. Chapter 7, The Swarm, March 30, 2026. The morning dawned with a sense of urgency. The sky was overcast, and a chill wind whispered through the abandoned streets, as if foretelling the dangers that lay ahead. Mia and I had spent a restless night in the small house near the tunnel, taking turns on watch and listening to the distant groans of the undead. We had no time to lose. Ann Arbor was within reach, but the journey there would be anything but easy. Armed with Carla's map and a renewed sense of determination, we set off, sticking to side streets and alleys to avoid drawing attention. As we moved westward, the landscape shifted from urban decay to a more suburban sprawl. Abandoned houses lined the streets, their windows shattered and doors ajar. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. We encountered our first major obstacle at a partially collapsed overpass. A horde of undead milled about below, their guttural moans filling the air. There were too many to fight, and the direct route through them was suicide. "We need to find a way around," Mia said, scanning the area for an alternative path. I nodded, my eyes landing on a narrow alleyway to the left. There, it might lead us around the horde. We made our way cautiously through the alley, every sense on high alert. The walls were covered in graffiti, a testament to the world that once was. As we emerged on the other side, we found ourselves in a small park, overgrown with weeds and littered with debris. The sound of footsteps made us freeze. A group of survivors appeared, armed and wary. Their leader, a tall woman with a stern expression, raised a hand in a gesture of caution. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady but edged with suspicion. "We're just trying to get to an arbor," I replied, keeping my hands visible. "We heard there's a safe zone there." The woman studied us for a moment before nodding. "You can come with us. We're headed the same way. But be warned, the roads are dangerous, and the undead are everywhere." Grateful for the added numbers, Mia and I joined their group. We moved quickly, the tension palpable as we navigated the treacherous terrain. The closer we got to an arbor, The more frequent the encounters with the undead became, our progress was slowed by constant skirmishes. The undead seemed to appear from nowhere, their relentless pursuit a grim reminder of the world we now lived in. Each encounter drained our energy and resources. We pushed on, driven by the hope of finding safety. As dusk approached, we reached the outskirts of an arbor. The city loomed before us. Its once bustling streets now eerily quiet. The safe zone was rumored to be located in a fortified complex on the northern edge of the city, but getting there would be a challenge. We entered the city cautiously, sticking to the shadows and avoiding open areas. The buildings were in better shape than those in Detroit, but the signs of struggle were evident. Burned-out cars and makeshift barricades lined the streets, a testament to the battles fought here. Suddenly, the sound of a helicopter filled the air. We looked up to see a military chopper hovering overhead, its spotlight sweeping the area. Hope surged within us. If the military was here, the safe zone might still be intact, but our moment of hope was shattered by a deafening roar. From the shadows, a massive horde of undead emerged. Drawn by the noise of the helicopter, they moved with terrifying speed, their numbers swelling with each passing second. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing Mia's hand and pulling her towards the nearest building. The group scattered, each person fighting to stay ahead of the swarm. We burst through the door of an old department store, barricading it as best we could. The undead pounded against the walls, their relentless moans filling the air. "We can't stay here," Mia said, her eyes wide with fear. "They'll break through eventually." I nodded, my mind racing. "We need to find a way to the roof. The helicopter might see us and pick us up." We moved quickly, navigating the darkened store and searching for a way up. The pounding on the doors grew louder, a stark reminder of the urgency of our situation. Finally, we found a stairwell and ascended to the roof, bursting out into the cold night air. The helicopter was still circling, its spotlight casting eerie shadows across the city. I waved frantically, hoping to catch the pilot's attention. "Over here," I shouted, my voice hoarse with desperation. The spotlight swung towards us, and the helicopter began to descend. Relief washed over us as we realized we had been seen, but the undead were still coming, their numbers growing with each passing moment. The helicopter touched down on the roof, and a soldier jumped out, motioning for us to hurry. "Get in now." We scrambled aboard, the roar of the rotors nearly deafening. The soldier helped us inside, and the helicopter lifted off just as the undead reached the rooftop. As we ascended, the city of Ann Arbor spread out below us, a landscape of desolation and ruin. But amidst the chaos, there was hope. The soldier handed us a headset, and I heard a voice crackle through the static. "You're safe now. We're taking you to the safe zone." Relief flooded through me as I looked at Mia, her expression mirroring my own. We had made it, against all odds. We had survived the gauntlet and found a glimmer of hope in a world gone mad. My name is Dee, and this is our story of survival and the relentless pursuit of hope, no matter the odds. Wait, don't go. If you liked this video, please take the like button and throw it at the subscribe button, then stomp on it.